Minister, there's been a war raging in Yemen for 7 years. 10,000 children have died directly and indirectly as a result of that war. 377,000 people have died directly and indirectly as a result of that war, and the UN estimates 17.4 million people are on the brink of starvation. That war involves Saudi Arabia, that is armed to the teeth by allies of ours, the United States, the UK and France. When are you going to argue for action against the war crimes of Saudi and its backers in Yemen?
Deputy, you don't need to tell me that there's been a war raging in Yemen for the last 7 years. I've answered questions on that many times here, and I've spoken on it in multiple fora. Yemen is one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, driven by 7 years of conflict, economic collapse and the breakdown of public institutions and services, which has left millions of people in need of humanitarian assistance. There is a very strong consensus across the EU in support of the efforts of UN Special Envoy for Yemen, Hans Grunberg, to bring about a political resolution to the conflict in Yemen. As a member of the Security Council, Ireland has also engaged extensively in support of the UN's efforts. I've held discussions with UN Special Envoy for Yemen, as well as Major General Michael Beery, head of the United Nations mission, to support the Hudaydah Agreement. I've engaged extensively with the countries of the region, including in direct talks with the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Iran and the UAE, stressing the need to work urgently towards a resolution of the conflict. In addition to significant diplomatic efforts, Ireland has also been a consistent and reliable donor to Yemen and has contributed over €37 million in humanitarian funding since 2015, including a commitment of €5 million for 2022, which I pledged on behalf of Ireland at the pledging conference for Yemen on the 16th of March. Ireland also contributes to the crisis in Yemen as an EU member state. Since 2015, the EU has contributed over €1.2 billion, including €827 million in humanitarian aid and €407 million in development assistance. Ireland will continue to support all efforts to end this terrible conflict, which is causing enormous humanitarian suffering. I totally agree with you on that, including through direct engagement with Saudi Arabia and other regional actors, and in the context of our position on the UN Security Council and as a European Union member state.
Minister, presumably, if anybody suggested in this House we should send a trade mission to Russia to develop our trade relationship, given what it's doing in Ukraine, I think they'd get pretty short shrift from you and everybody else, rightly. Or if anybody suggested that it would be okay for any of our allies, so-called, to be selling weapons to Vladimir Putin in the current context. Yet strangely, in the context of the Saudi war that has brought Yemen to the brink of catastrophe, Ireland sends a trade mission in November to develop trade relationships with Saudi, who are conducting this barbarous war in Yemen. Our allies, the US and the UK, are selling billions of weapons. The latest deal by the United States, $500 million in an air-to-air missile arms sale. Similar massive sales by the UK. Where's the condemnation? Where's the criticism? Where's the demands that these relations with the Saudi dictatorship conducting this brutal war in Yemen end immediately? Where are these demands?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I mean, look, can I say in response to this that, you know, the idea that the war in Yemen is categorised as a war that one country is solely responsible for is completely inaccurate. And this simplified notion that it's all Saudi Arabia's fault is just not true. Saudi Arabia has a role to play in terms of bringing about a ceasefire. Saudi Arabia has responsibilities in terms of ensuring that civilians are protected in war, as any warring party has under international law and the relevant conventions. But it is not true to say that, as is being suggested by the opposition, that all of this is one country's fault, and if only we would isolate them and implement trade embargoes and arms embargoes, that all of this would stop overnight. Like, that's not my understanding of it. And I have met all of the parties involved here. in different settings. I have faith in Hans Grunberg, who is the UN Special Representative, and he certainly wouldn't take that view either, I can assure you. From my understanding, Saudi Arabia is supportive of a ceasefire under certain conditions, and that hasn't been able to be agreed with the Houthi leadership. I've spoken to Iran quite directly in terms of their relationship and their influence with the Houthi leadership to try and bring about peace. So we need a balanced view here. I am not saying that we shouldn't hold Saudi Arabia to account for their actions and their decisions. Of course we should. But we should also hold all parties to this conflict who have been involved in brutality and attacks, particularly in recent weeks, to account as well. Ultimately, this is about bringing about a peace and a ceasefire so that we can actually help the civilians to deal with the enormous human suffering that the population of Yemen have had to deal with. But drawing direct comparisons with the war in Ukraine and so on is not helpful. Every conflict is different and complex and needs solutions. That's why we have special representatives for the UN who are full-time working on trying to find a basis for peace, and we should be supporting those processes.
Minister, Deputy Boyd Barrett.
Let me just say that the Irish anti-war movement, in conjunction with Saudi dissidents, who, by the way, can never return to Saudi because if they did, they'd be killed, are organising a demonstration this Saturday at 1 o'clock at the Garden of Remembrance, and they'll be marching to the Saudi embassy. That march, by the way, was organised long before the war in Ukraine, and in a gesture of solidarity, they're now also going to make it also a demonstration against the war of Ukraine. It'd be nice to see a bit of reciprocation from Europe in that regard. But let's be absolutely clear. You see, there is a difference, and everybody can see the difference, Minister. The Saudi dictatorship is the most vile dictatorship you can possibly imagine. They chopped up Jamal Khashoggi with a sword. They killed 81 people at the weekend, executed them for political crimes. They are directly interfering in another country, Yemen. Iran may have relationships with the Houthi. They're not directly involved. UAE and Saudi are bombing Yemen with weapons supplied by the United States and the UK, and they continue to arm this brutal dictatorship. And yet we want favoured trade relations with this regime, and we say nothing about the arms sales.
Thanks.
My understanding is that issues have been raised in relation to the war in Yemen by the Taoiseach, but it's my responsibility as Minister for Foreign Affairs to raise these issues directly with the countries involved. And I have been doing that repeatedly on behalf of the Irish government and the Irish people in terms of expressing concerns. And have spent time to travel and meet in person with the UN Special Representative as well, to try to make sure that we are consistent with the international effort that the UN are pursuing here to try and bring about peace.